Almost every stock analyst mentions ROE, return on equity, as one of the most important financial ratio. But that's only half the story. The importance of ROE can only be understood if you understand the individual components which make up the ROE. In this video, we shall see why ROE is important. Also, we shall see DuPont analysis which breaks ROE into different components, giving us a broader perspective. Let's get started. We must have a very good understanding of profitability, productivity, and leverage. Let's start with leverage. As you know, lever is a simple machine that helps transfer or transform force, allowing a smaller input force to produce a larger output force. Here you can see the man is able to pull a 1 ton load, which without a lever would have been quite a task, and he is able to do so effortlessly with the help of lever. Leverage is derived from the word lever and it means just the same. You extend your financial power with leverage. In finance, leverage means the use of borrowed money to make an investment or project with the goal of increasing your returns. Let's see with the help of an example. Let's say I have 100k with me and now I wish to purchase a house. In case one, I purchase the house, or let's call it a hut, with my limited available finance of 100k. In case 2, what I do is I go to a bank and take a mortgage, and I am able to get a house beyond my normal means. Now, with that debt, if I have to make my balance sheet, which shall represent my assets, liability, and equity, how shall it look like? Before we see that, I would tell you that equity means ownership. It is the value of ownership stake in an asset or a company. And here in my personal example, it is the equity on the house which I am having. So in the case one, what I had done was I had taken the house, $100 house, 100k dollar house with zero liability. So I have the 100% equity on that house, which makes my equity to be $100, just the same as the price of the house. So assets is equal to equity in this case. In the second case, what I have done is that I have taken a mortgage, 400k USD mortgage I have taken. Thereby, I was able to afford a house of 500k. Now my equity is still 100k because 400k I have taken from the bank. So my equity is 100k only, and the whole house asset is 500k. Now let's say the example wherein the house prices went up, the real estate has inflated, and I am able to get 10% increase on my property. Now the asset value in the first case will become 110, and my profit is 10k, and it is like 10% profit I am able to reap. Now with the help of leverage, what you see here is the rise of 10% would lead to the raise of the house price from 500k to 550k, and thereby my equity on the house would become 150k. 400 is still liability to the bank, but my equity has become 150. So from my initial investment of 100k, I am able to get a 50% profit. This is how leverage helps us to increase our profitability, and it becomes more and more important for companies to look into leverage. But at the same time, leverage leads to increased risk also. Let's see the opposite example wherein house prices went down by 10%. Excuse this up, it is not up, it is went down by 10%. So in this case, the house became, in the first case, case 1, house price became 90k and I lost 10%. In the other case where I had a 500k house, the house price became 450k and I lost 50% of my initial money because I still have to return 400k to the bank, the mortgage, and my equity remains 50 because prices were reduced by 50 percent, 10%, and thereby 50k. So you can see that leverage, if utilized properly, leads to enhanced profits. But at the same time, if it's misused, then it can lead to a lot of losses as well. Leverage ratio, also called as equity multiplier, is the ratio of total assets to the shareholders' equity. A low equity multiplier would be less than 1.5. Moderate is between 1.5 to 2.5. High would be greater than 2.5. Now we know that assets is equal to liability plus equity. This is the basic equation of the balance sheet. If assets is equal to equity, that means there is no leverage and the leverage ratio shall come as 1. When ratio is equal to 1, it means company's total assets is equal to total equity, suggesting that no debt is used to finance assets, which is a very conservative financial position. Ratio greater than 1. A company has assets more than equity, implying it is financing its assets through both equity and debt. A higher ratio may suggest higher financial leverage, meaning the company is using debt financing to expand its assets. This can increase potential returns but also heighten the financial risks. Now let's see in case 1 what was the equity multiplier. It was 100 by 100 and it was 1. In the case 2, assets were 500k and the equity was 100. Thereby the equity multiplier was 5. And this means that for every dollar of equity, the company, here there is no company, here is me the individual, I have $5 in assets. This indicates a reliance on debt financing to fund my assets. For financial ratios, it is very important that you have to evaluate them in the context of its industry and peer group. So here are some ratios which are given for technology industry. Equity multiplier higher than 3 may be acceptable. For financial services industry, equity multiplier greater than 4 may be acceptable. In retail, a lower equity multiplier less than 2 may be more suitable. Now we shall see the second term, which is productivity. We know that productivity means getting more from less. For example, we can reduce resources and have the same amount of work done, then we are having a highly productive team. Assets have different components, primarily cash or cash equivalents, accounts receivable, which means the money which is yet to come to us for some services or goods which we have provided, and PP&E, plant, property and equipment. For example, our machineries could be the plants, equipments which are used to produce something, they are also assets. Revenue is total income generated from business activities. It is also called sales. So if you hear sales or revenue, they mean the same. Now, what is asset turnover? Asset turnover is the ratio of revenue to total assets. It measures a company's efficiency in using assets to generate revenue. Like for a given company, these many assets were there. With this many assets, how much revenue the company was able to generate, that is asset turnover. It's a key performance metric for operational efficiency. So if we are efficient in utilizing our assets, we would be able to have more asset turnover with less assets, which means with a given asset we are able to reap more revenue if our asset turnover is good. A higher ratio of asset turnover indicates the company is more efficient in utilizing its assets to generate sales. It means company is able to produce more revenue with each dollar of assets it owns. Lower ratio suggests less efficiency in generating sales from assets. Companies with low asset turnover may be underutilizing their assets or may have larger amount of fixed assets that do not contribute directly to sales. So for example, you have a big plot as an industry owner, you have a big plot which is not being used for anything. So that is not contributing anything directly to the sales. So even though you have an asset, which is a land, but it is not contributing to your revenue or to your sales. So that could be one case. And the other case is that you are not able to utilize your assets properly. The third thing which we have to see is profitability. Profit margin is net profit by revenue. So now we have seen all the three items which we wanted to see before we go to ROE. So ROE is return on equity and it's a ratio of net profit to shareholders equity. Suppose a company has shareholder equity of 1 million and they generated 200k profit, then the ROE would be 0.20 or 20%. And a ROE of 20% means that for every dollar of shareholders' equity, the company generated 20 cents of profit. If ROE is less than 10%, weak performance, ROE 10 to 15% average performance, greater than 15 strong performance, greater than 20 exceptional performance. Now we come to the crux of this whole exercise, which is the DuPont analysis. So ROE, we saw earlier that it is the ratio of net profit to shareholders' equity. It can also be written in an expanded form like this. And here, if you cancel out revenue with this revenue, assets with this assets, then you will be left with net profit is to shareholders equity, meaning this. So now what we have done is ROE we have made into segregated into three components, which are net profit margin for profitability, asset turnover for productivity, and equity multiplier for leverage. Now, why this distinction of components is very important? Let's see it with the example. Let's say that this is the ROE which we are getting, and we got the ROE of 21%. But when we calculated the individual components, net profit margin, asset turnover, and financial leverage, we got these numbers. If you multiply these three, you will get to 21.8. Now, what happened here is that in a second year, in a next period, your net profit margin increased and it led to the increase in ROE. The other two ratios was just the same, but net profit margin led to the increase in ROE. In the second case, what happened is asset turnover, which means your productivity increase, which led to increase in ROE. In the third case, leverage led to increase in ROE. So you are able to distinguish that what is the factor, what is the effective component which is leading to the increase in your ROE. Thereby, you are able to either increase your operational efficiency if in case productivity is going down, get to increasing the profit margins if in case the profit margins are going down, or you want to utilize your leverage, either take more leverage or less leverage, or utilize it properly to have the financial leverage in control. So different things can be done and a proper handle can be attained with the help of factoring out ROE into these individual components. So profit margin analysis, asset turnover evaluation, and leverage assessment gives us the handle on different controls which we can have. So if in case high margin is there, that means we have high profitability, high profit margin, high profitability. High turnover means that we have efficient, excellent resource management. High leverage means we have potential of financial risk. If we are taking too much leverage, we are taking too much debt, even though our ROE indicates a very good ROE, but still high leverage is a potential financial risk. If we compare it with the low leverage means very conservative approach, which is also not considered to be good. Low turnover means we are not able to efficiently utilize our assets, and low margins means that we have cost management issues. So with the help of DuPont analysis and with ROE, we are able to have a very good view on how much returns we are getting with respect to the equity which is invested in the business. Thank you.